So we've just started this session a little early so that our pricing expert, Mark, here can have a few chats with people rolling in, and I'll actually hand it directly over to him and he can chat away and do his magic.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be starting bang on the hour, but if you want to let me know where you're from in the chat box, just stick it in the chat box and let me know something interesting about you, or let me know perhaps what is your biggest challenge with running outsourced controller services or business advisory services. What's your biggest challenge? Let me know in the chat box, and then I can give you a shout out. I can see that we have already over 60 people here. So don't be shy, say something in the chat box. I'd love to say hello to you. And we have, oh, my good friend Randall's here. Hi there, Randall, good to see you. Randall's part of my Value Pricing Academy, so I know Randall very, I think you are, aren't you, Randall? Is that right? Or you're part of my Facebook group? I see you posting a lot. Who else have we got? Let's see. We have Michael McClellan is here. Hi there, Michael. We have Selena Renfro is here from Georgia. I assume that's Georgia, the state in the United States. We have Lynn is here. Chris is here from LA. We have Selena, I've mentioned, but she's from St. Paul in MN, Minnesota. That's tested, but you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the UK. So I'm sometimes a little bit rusty on where all the various states are, or at least the initials, MN, but I think that's Minnesota. Andrea McDonald is here from Virginia. Hi there. Biggest challenge is knowing how to provide the services included in controllership. Okay, I might touch on that a little bit during today, but today's more about pricing in my session. Yes, Randall, you are in the VP. I thought you were. Mindy Morrison is here as well. I know Mindy. Hi there. We have Dawn Ross is here. We're going to be starting on the hour, by the way. In about 30 seconds, we will start. We have, where did I get to? Dawn from Calgary. Maggie is here from Vancouver, British Columbia. We have Millie is here from Quebec. So I'm guessing most people, if not everyone's from either the US or Canada, is my guess. Bernie is here. Bernie Kime. Hi there, Bernie. It's a while since I saw you. Hope you're doing well. Randall's biggest challenge is where to begin. Wendy is here from Maine. Rajiv is here. Right, we need to start. So a few final quick ones. We've got Tamara, we've got Ellen, we've got, who else have I not said hello to? Kelly Parks is here. Hi there, Kelly. Great to see you. It's been a while since we've met face to face. Deandra is here. Okay, I think I'd probably best start because we have so much stuff to share with you today. In my session today, and I hope you've enjoyed the show so far, the event so far, and there's still loads more great stuff to come. I'm going to be focusing on the pricing piece, the pricing part of outsourced controller services, business advisory. That's our focus. I have a lot of stuff to cover with you today. I will try to find some time to answer questions at the end. So if you have questions, and feel free to use the chat box and so on. If you have questions, it will be much better if you put them in the Q&A box, because as you will see, as you can see now, the chat box goes crazy and I will miss questions in the chat box. So use the Q&A box. If you do use the chat box, put 2 capital Q's in front, because I will sometimes scan the chat box, but I might not. We'll see how crazy it goes, because I'm going to do a little benchmarking later, and so the chat box will really light up. So therefore, use the Q&A if you want your question answered. Okay, so before I dive in, I know some of you well, like Bernie, I know Randall, and obviously Kelly, but for those of you that have no idea who I am, my name is Mark Wickersham. I'm a chartered accountant. That's, I guess, the equivalent of a CPA. I'm from the UK, although I now live in Portugal. I've been here for 2 years in Portugal, because the weather's not great in the UK. I've been in the profession now for over 30 years. 1988, came out of university, went to work for a large multi-partner firm in the UK, in Sheffield, right in the middle of the UK. And I spent 3 years on a training contract, qualified as a chartered accountant, spent the next 3 years at that firm specializing in tax, personal tax, and then became their first corporation tax manager. But I then realized I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. I wanted to do my own thing. And so after thinking about it, I finally plucked up the courage to hand my notice in and start my own accounting firm. That was actually in May 1996. I started my firm. I had no clients. I just had a spare bedroom in the house, and and bought a desk and a computer and started looking for clients. It was an exciting day, 31st of May, 1996, full of hope, enthusiasm, optimism for the future. But little did I realize how hard the next 2.5 years would be. I was enthusiastic. I was perhaps young, naive. I thought I knew it all. If you were looking at my firm from the outside looking in back then, you might have thought I was successful because I grew crazy fast. I moved from my bedroom to my first offices in 2 months, hired 3 people. In 15 months later, I then moved into bigger premises. I went from 0 clients to 200 in 2 years. I went to, in dollar terms, just over $250,000 in fees in the first 2 years. I was growing crazy fast. But by the end of 1998, my life was a mess. I found by the end of 1998, I was working crazy hard, crazy long hours, and struggling to make ends meet, struggling to pay the bills. I seemed to be working incredibly hard just to meet the payroll, to pay all the people that were working for me. So something had to change. And I was very fortunate that I got a marketing piece from a guy called Steve Pipe, who is now one of my mentors, heroes, and closest friends, inviting me to a 3-day accountants masterclass in November 1998. And that changed everything for me. I realized a number of things, but the 2 things that really hit me was, firstly, I realized I had no idea how to price my services. I was way too cheap. And I also realized there was more to doing compliance work. I learned about, one thing Steve taught was how we can do business advisory work, helping clients build more profitable businesses. And I then started focusing on that, working with clients, helping them increase their profits, grow their business. In 1999, I spent 4 days with Paul Dunn on the Accountants Bootcamp. You may have heard of that. That was also life-changing for me. And it was Paul Dunn that introduced me shortly afterwards in 1999 to Ron Baker. And it was Ron Baker that first explained to me this concept of value pricing. So in that 12-month period, I met the 3 people who have shaped my life the most, my heroes: Steve Pipe, Paul Dunn, Ron Baker. And when I heard the value pricing message, it all made sense. I realized there was a better way of pricing, and I started to change things in 1999. I had a huge impact. My firm went from a complete mess to, within 2 years, being very profitable. I then sold it to my client managers a few years later in a management buyout. And I did that because of the things that I was doing. Steve Pipe invited me to speak at his events. He was growing a network of accountants in the UK. And I then went to work with Steve for 10 years. Steve and I worked helping UK accountants. And then I started in 2014. I then formed the Value Pricing Academy. And since 2014, I now teach 500 accountants and bookkeepers around the world, mainly in the US and Canada, people like Randall. I teach them how to price, how to master value pricing, and also how to build and grow a more profitable accounting firm. I've written a number of books over the years. So some of them are A Practical Approach to Value Pricing. My first book, Effective Pricing for Accountants, went to #1 on Amazon in the UK. How to build a successful bookkeeping business and price the fastest way to change profits. My next book is coming out, I think in July. Kogan Page are publishing it, so watch out for that. I'll be mentioning that, doing some book launches soon. Now, I do have loads of free resources for you, and if you want to find out more, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Whenever people connect with me on LinkedIn, I will then send you a message back with a whole bunch of free stuff. So let me just put into the chat box my LinkedIn profile. Should be there. Feel free to connect with me afterwards, and then, as I say, I'll send you some free stuff. For example, I run a monthly training session, and I will put you on the list if you want, so that you can get access to free training every month from me. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? We only have 50 minutes and 45 minutes left now. We're going to cover, firstly, I'm going to share with you what's the #1 mistake that accountants make when pricing forecasting work. I'll explain why forecasting soon. Why you must price advisory services based on value, and how to present your price so your clients willingly pay you more money. In other words, I'm going to show you how to make more money by pricing more confidently from outsourced controller services, business advisory. But let's let's start first of all with a bit of a definition, because I know the whole focus of this event is around outsourced financial controller services, and that encompasses so many things and different definitions of that. And I know other people at this event will be sharing a little bit more about what that consists of. I'm going to talk a little bit about business advisory, which is very similar. It's about basically working with clients to help them build more profitable businesses. And I think there are really six components of building a service, a solution for helping clients build a more successful business, more profitable, to grow, to reach their goals. And so let me just share with you what I see those six key elements of when we work with our clients to help them build a successful business. Firstly, there's got to be a goal setting element to it, because if we're going to work with our clients to help them build a more successful business, then we have to understand, well, what does success mean for that particular client? So what do they want out of their business? What do they want out of our lives? If we want to start doing advisory work of whatever form that might take, we have to better understand what do they want to achieve. And so we need to be doing some form of goal setting. We also should be doing some form of strategic planning. Now, what on earth is strategic planning? I spent a year at Durham University Business School, which in the UK is the leading university when it comes to business, MBA training, and so on. And one of the lecturers there gave a whole bunch of textbook definitions of strategy. And he ended by saying, but I like things to be simple. Strategy is really this. Strategy is simply figuring out where are we right now, and where do we want to be in the future? Right now is point A. Where we want to be in the future, our goals is point B. And strategy is simply all the things that we can do to get from A to B, to get from where we are now to where we want to be. So we want to be helping our clients build a plan for getting to their goals. Then, of course, another element of any form of advisory work will be inevitably reporting, because we, as accountants, we're the experts in numbers, and we should root everything in numbers. We should be using our skill with numbers. So that would mean producing management information, more useful reports than what the typical statutory financial statements, end of year statements, they're always out of date. We should be producing regular, perhaps monthly management reports. Then there will be an element of forecasting. When we're working with clients, we want to help them forecast the future, perhaps doing cash flow forecasting, perhaps doing profit forecasting, balance sheet forecasting. Then, of course, there's the ongoing advice piece, and that's working with the client closely to help them understand the numbers, to help them understand what those management reports are showing. And then finally, there's another important piece, is the accountability, which is, if you like, nagging the client to take action. Because one of the things I found when I work with clients, when I was doing advisory work in my practice, I would have a session with them. I'd show them the numbers, we'd brainstorm, we'd come up with a plan, an action plan, and then I'd meet with them a month later and I'd say to them, how have you got on with the things you said you wanted to do last month? And they'd say, do you know what, I just got busy. Some customers rang up with problems and we got distracted and we haven't done anything. And that's often the way. It's the same for us as well. We often have great intentions, but other things get in the way. We end up firefighting. And so one of the most powerful things we can do with our clients is to help them keep on track, which is accountability. Think of it as a coaching role. So I share those six things with you because to me, they are all the core elements of any form of advisory service, helping clients build a more successful business. And in this session, we haven't got time to dive into things like how to deliver those services. But what I will, the great news is this is great timing, this event, because I happen to have an event coming up in just a few weeks' time called the Business Advisory Masterclass. It's a 3-day online conference where I'm going to be teaching how to deliver a profitable advisory service. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on during the session. What we're going to do today is focus specifically on pricing. How do we price these sorts of services? And I'm going to focus specifically on the forecasting element. But everything I teach, we could apply to anything to do with offering an outsourced controller service or business advisory service. I'm just going to use forecasting, just so we can make it really practical. Okay, I want to start though with, I want to start with a question. I want to do some benchmarking because it's fascinating seeing how different firms price in the profession. And I'm going to look in a short while at the first of our 3 insights is, what are the big mistakes that we make when we price forecasting work, which is actually the same as any form of advisory work, the big pricing mistakes. But before we do that, I want you to tell me I want you to put a number in the chat box. Let me just pull this up. And imagine that a client or potential client came to you and said they're looking to generate, they need to create some finance, and to do that, they have to they need a cash flow forecast and a profit forecast. And they've come to you to ask you to do a cash flow and profit forecast. And you know that to do that, it will take 7 hours a day to create a cash flow forecast and profit forecast. So tell me, and if you're in Canada, perhaps put a C in front, just so we know because of exchange rates. How much do you think you would charge typically for a day's worth of work doing a forecast? Is the question. And there's no right or wrong answer, so don't be shy. Thank you for those that put a C in front, just so the connect with different. Canadian dollars is different to US dollars. And as I'm looking at this, I can see already there's quite a range of prices. It looks like from a quick glance, and I haven't got time to analyze this properly, but it seems to be that the most common, the medium price would be $1,000. But some people much higher. I'm just looking at Rajiv, 3,800. That's one of the higher ones I've seen. I've not seen anyone say for free, which is great. Thanks. That's good to know. Nobody would do this work for free. I think Amy at 750 Canadian dollars, perhaps at the lower end. No, Mindy perhaps beats that. Hi there, Mindy. Okay, so it's looking like it ranges from 500 to about 3,000, with 1,000 being, I think, the most common price. Okay, hold that thought, because I'm going to come back to, I'm going to show you a story in a short while, a very new story from just 2 days ago. But between $1,000, $2,000 is perhaps where most people are. Right, what we're going to look at, first of our 3 areas is let's look at what is the #1 mistake that I see accountants making when pricing forecasting work. Actually, I'm going to give you 3. I know in the synopsis for this session, I said I'll share the #1 mistake, but as I was preparing today, I thought, you know what, I'll share 3 things that we do wrong with our pricing when we're pricing forecasting work. Actually, when we price anything, to be honest. The first one is this, and this is a general one. The first one is, in our profession, accountants and bookkeepers are too cheap. Okay, we are too cheap. If you take nothing else away from this session, you need to put your prices up. It's as simple as that. And I'm looking at, again, the chat box right now, and you could be charging more for forecasting work. I will share a story shortly to illustrate that. So first thing is, we're too cheap in the profession. We have to figure out how to price better. Secondly, we price by the hour very often in the profession. And even if not by the hour, we price with a fixed price. We give the client a price in advance, a single fixed price. And a single fixed price is always wrong. A single fixed price, sometimes I think it's called flat fees now, it's become very common. It's still just a form of cost plus pricing. In other words, there are 2 ways to price: cost plus pricing and value pricing. And everything else you've heard, whether it's time-based billing, menu pricing, whether it's demand-based pricing, contingent pricing, percentage pricing, flat fees, all of these are these are just pricing models, different ways of coming up with a price. And all these myriad of different pricing models, of which I've come up with over 40, or there are at least 40, they're all a form of cost plus pricing or value pricing. Cost plus pricing means that we work out the cost of doing something, add on a hoped for margin, and magically there's our price. It's a crazy way to price because it ignores the customer. Value pricing starts with the customer first. What does the customer value? What's a forecast worth to the client? Those of you, many of you have said, I'm sorry to pick on somebody, but I think it was, let me go, Emery, you said 1,000 Canadian dollars. Okay, I'm guessing here and assuming that's a fixed price. When I ask people, why that number, why $1,000? And the answer I often get is, well, if it's going to take me 7 hours, it's a day, and this is valuable work based on a day and my hourly rate. That's why I come up with 1,000. In other words, although it's better than pricing based on the hour, because the problem with pricing based on the hour is the customer doesn't know the price till the work's finished, and the price is therefore always a surprise. And so giving a fixed price up front is fairer on the customer. It's fair on the customer because they know what the price is up front, but it's not fair on you because you're pricing based on your best guess of how many hours it will take, not based on the value the customer gets from you doing that work. And the thing about advisory work, much more so than compliance work, with any form of added value work, with advisory work, controller services, forecasting, business advisory, these are some of the most valuable things that we can do. And so we absolutely should be pricing based on the value, nothing to do with how many hours it takes. That's irrelevant. As I said, I'm going to give you a story in a short while just to illustrate this. The third big mistake that we make is the way that we often give our prices. And I think back to when I was in practice back in the 1990s. The crazy thing I would do is when I met a potential client and they were looking for a new accountant, they'd ask me some questions. I'd share some great information. I came from a tax background, so I would show them a couple of ideas on how they could save tax. And very often the conversation went like this. Mark, this is amazing. I've never heard these ideas before. You're the exact sort of accountant I am looking for. I've never been given this advice by my previous accountant, but Mark, tell me, what will it cost? At that point, I would panic. I have no idea. I've never worked with you before. I don't know how long it will take. I don't know. So I would then say, good question. Let me go away and think about it, and I'll create a proposal and I'll send it to you through the mail. Back in the 90s, we had something called the mail. You might these days email them. And so I'd send them this nice proposal with all the things that I could do. The price was there, and they'd never call back. And I couldn't work out why. And then I realized that whenever I asked for a proposal from somebody, so perhaps you've looked for somebody to do some landscape gardening, for example, and they send you a quote or proposal. Whenever you get a quote or proposal, what's the first thing you look for? And I know the answer. We look for the price. And your clients are no different. You could send them the most fancy proposal with all the amazing things you're going to do to solve their business problems. And they're going to get that proposal and they're going to flick through it because they're looking for the price. And when they see that price, that number in their brain, they make an instant judgment about that number. Usually, that's a bit more than I was expecting. And they never ring back. We must have the pricing conversation face to face. And I include online Zoom in that, Zoom meetings. We must discuss price with the client. With value pricing, we've got to have a proper conversation to understand what they value. And then, as we'll talk about later, when you give your price, you want to give people choices. You also want to price high. Because everybody values things different. And unless you happen to have a crystal ball, we have no idea what any one particular client is willing to pay. So we'll look at that. We're going to come back to that point later. So hold that point. We have to price high. I'll show you how to do it in a short while. Okay, let's look at, so that's insight one. That's the 3 mistakes we make. Let's look at insight number 2. And this one is, just bear with me a second while I pull it up on screen. Insight number 2 is why you must price advisory based on value. And we kind of touched on it, the fact that helping a client solve their business problems, to help them build a more profitable business, to help them grow their business, to help them achieve their goals, that's some of the most valuable stuff that we can do. Much more valuable than simply filling in a tax return. Not that there isn't value in compliance work, but the greatest value that we can create for them is helping them to achieve their goals in life. And so we absolutely need to charge based on that value, not based on the time. This should be the most profitable work we do. And I want to share with you a story I got just 2 days ago in my Facebook group. I have a Facebook group called Value Pricing with Mark Wickersham. And if you're not in that group yet, I will put the link in the chat box. You can click on, just answer the 2 or 3 questions. We'll let you into the group in the next 24 hours. It's a community of 9,000 accountants and bookkeepers who are on this journey to master value pricing. And I got this message just 2 days ago from Roy Linus. He's somebody who I've known for many years, and he's part of my Value Pricing Academy. Perhaps Randall knows Roy. And Roy shared a couple of success stories. I'm going to, because it's quite small on the screen, I'm going to focus on one of them. I want to focus on one of his success stories because it illustrates an interesting point. Roy had just the other day a potential client come to see him. He's somebody he'd met years ago when he ran a business club in the UK. And this person came to him because they'd gone to Dubai and they're setting up a new business and they need a significant amount of funding. He remembered Roy, came back to Roy and said, look, I need some funding, but I've been told that I need a cash flow forecast and a profit forecast. Can you do that? What will it cost? And so Roy gave him 3 choices, and we'll talk more about the science behind that later. He gave him 3 choices, and Roy knew that it would only take him a day to do the work. And so these are in UK sterling, by the way. So if you're in the US, multiply the numbers by 1.3. If you're in Canada, I think you can multiply them by about 1.7, 1.8. So he said 3 choices. Number 1, I can do this forecast for you and I can do it for a fixed price. So you know exactly what the cost will be of £8,497. So that's about what, 12,000 US dollars, something in that order. Or he said, alternatively, I can do it for just an upfront fee of 3,497, 3,500. That's about 5,000 US dollars, perhaps a bit more, 5,500. And a success fee. In other words, if the work I do for you helps you to secure the funding that you're after, and I don't know how much the funding was, Roy didn't share, but I guess a significant amount, there will be an additional success fee of 15,000. That's about 20,000 US dollars. Number 3, I won't charge you any upfront fee. I'll do the forecast, I'll help you get the funding. And if you get the funding, I will charge you a success fee of 35,000. About 50,000 odd US dollars. Gave the client 3 choices. And he said the client chose the middle one. He chose the middle one. Roy went to work on it. He used a piece of software and he did all the forecasts. It took him a day's worth of work and he got paid about $5,000 for doing that work with, and he hasn't, because it was only posted 2 days ago, he doesn't know the outcome yet. But if the client gets the funding, then he'll get an additional success fee of £15,000, $20,000. So going back to your benchmarking, when I said to you, you are too cheap, you are too cheap. People who are understanding value pricing, and there was more to what Roy did. I've been working with Roy for many years now. He's done some very clever things. He's very creative in the way he prices. When we get better at value pricing, we can get, with advisory work, particularly with forecasting work, we should be able to get extremely well rewarded. So I hope that makes sense. You're too cheap. We mustn't price based on the hour. We need to understand what value is to the client. Okay, let's move on to, we'll talk about insight number 3. And this is where I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. Insight 3 is, okay, so we now understand that we need to price higher. We need to price based on value. But Mark, how do I come up with the price? How do I present the price? What's the process I need to go through to get these sorts of prices? What did Roy go through to get $5,000 plus a $20,000 potential success fee? We'll find out very soon. And by the way, if you join my Facebook group, if you click on the link, you'll be able to see that post from Roy. And I'm hoping Roy will, well, I know Roy, he'll give an update. So I'm excited to know whether the client gets the funding and whether he gets the success fee or not. So how do we present our price? And there's a number of things that we have to do. I'm going to share with you some of the key stages. The first thing we have to do when we're pricing high value work, advisory work, controller services, forecasting work, is we have to understand the reason why. We have to start by asking the client questions. We want to better understand, why have they come to us? What's the pain they're facing right now? What's the challenges? What are the roadblocks? What are the problems they have in their business? And what do they want to achieve? What are they looking to do with their business? Are they looking to grow it? Are they looking to exit the business in 10 years? Are they looking to increase profitability? improve cash flow. We want to understand what their goals are, what they want to achieve, because the better that we understand the problems they have now and where they want to get to with their business, the better that we can firstly come up with the right solution. Because it may well be the right solution is not what they initially ask us for. It may be through that conversation we identify other ways that we can add more value to help them to create, get to where they want to get to solve their problems. We need to be better at asking questions than we are. It all starts with asking questions. Ultimately, we want to understand what's important to them. What do they value? Next thing we want to do is, once we understand that, once we understand what's important to the client, once we've asked the questions, and by the way, in the Value Pricing Academy, I teach people that with this sort of work, we should have at least a 2-meeting process. And meeting 1 would be just to do this, just to ask questions and understand better, which means then we can go away and then think about step 2, which is, what can we do? How can we best solve this problem for the client? And how can we give them some choices? And I'll talk a bit more about this in a few seconds, about options. Options are extremely important when we are value pricing. I'll explain more very soon. Let me just get you through the 5 or 6 steps first. Then what we want to do is build up the value. And that means that having now got our solution with some choices for the client, we have to be better at building up the value. Because the reason why, if you've ever presented a price to a client, if a client's ever said to you, that's a bit expensive, it is not because you're too expensive. You're too cheap. The reason why somebody says that's a bit expensive is very simple. It's because they don't understand what's in it for them. They don't understand the value. And that's because as a profession, we've never been very good at articulating, at communicating, at explaining the value of what we do. So we have to be better at building up the value, talking about the end result. What would their life look like when they've gone through this service, this process that we're talking about? We have to build up value better. Words are so, so important. Then what we have to do is we need to involve the client in the pricing process. We don't then say, like I did back in the 1990s, oh, let me go away, think about it, I'll send you a proposal. That's crazy. We have to have the conversation with the client. And as part of that process, and I'm going to show you in practical terms how you do it, one way that you can do it in a few minutes. As part of that process, you want to price high. And the reason for that, there's actually lots of reasons to do with price psychology. But it's particularly important when it comes to things like financial controller services, forecasting work, business advisory. You see, these are the sorts of services that when you're talking to a client, they probably have never experienced before. They've never bought them before. And so they have no idea what the price should be. And what happens is, in the world of price psychology, is that whenever somebody sees a price, the brain goes away subconsciously, in a fraction of a second, the brain goes away to make a comparison somewhere to see if it's a fair price or not. Now, if someone's buying a tax return service or a bookkeeping service or a payroll service, they've probably experienced that before. Perhaps they're talking to you about compliance work. Perhaps they're talking to you about bookkeeping because they want to change from their existing bookkeeper. And they've experienced that service before. They have a handle or feel as to where the price should be roughly because they've experienced it. But advisory, they don't have that benchmark. And so it's down to us to create what's called the anchor in their mind, an anchor that's going to make them realize that, to give them something as a frame for the price that you're going to give. And let me give you an example of this. Let's imagine that you want to sell somebody financial controller services, and you know this needs to be something in the region of $40,000, $50,000 a year. And this happens to be a client that up until now has only bought your compliance services, and they've been a $5,000 client. When you reveal your price for your controller services, I know it's way more valuable than your compliance work, but they're going to judge that price based on the $5,000 that they've paid you a year for the compliance work. And so any price higher than $5,000 is going to feel expensive. If they've paid you $5,000 for compliance work and now you quote $40,000, they're going to see that as incredibly expensive. So what we have to do is create a different anchor in their mind, or a different reference price. We have to destroy the $5,000 and plant in their mind a different number. I will show you how you do it later, but the whole thing is about pricing high. And it doesn't matter if the client says that's too high, because we're having the conversation in a meeting with the client, which means that if the client says that's too high, we can work with them there and then and change it. If you send the proposal through the mail and the price is too high, there's nothing you can do. You've lost control of the process. This is why you must price with the client. And then the final point is, we need to, if you want to get better prices, you must have a system for offering an upsell. What that means is that when a client then says, yes, that's exactly what I want, that's not the end of the process. We should then offer them enhancements, other things. Okay, I'm going to show you a bit more about how you do that. Before I dive into how you do that, I said to you earlier that I am running something called the Business Advisory Masterclass in just a few weeks' time. And so this will build nicely on today's event. Let me just tell you a little bit more about that. I just need to flick across to here. And I'm going to put a link into the chat box. Let me just get that ready. So the Business Advisory Masterclass is a 3-day virtual conference. And I'm going to give you a link to this page here so you can go and check it out afterwards and decide whether you want to come or not. It's May the 24th through to May the 26th. It's over 10 hours of training. When you go and look at the website, what you'll find is that you'll get over 10 hours of training from me and some other speakers. There'll be lots of options to ask questions in some of the expo booths. Helm will be there, so you can find out more about them. I will be doing the keynote sessions, but there are other amazing speakers as well, people who are doing amazing things with advisory work. Some of these speakers are people in practice, just like you, doing extraordinary things. Like Neil Criddle, for example, is going to share how he, in just 2 years, has built a practice from 0 to 250,000, focusing around advisory work. And in my sessions over the 3 days, on day 1, I'll be talking about how to spot opportunities, how to look at a client's set of numbers and look at possibilities, options, potential problems, which will start a conversation with the client. And we'll look at how to package up more advisory. On day 2, I'll be looking at how to profitably price and sell. We're scratching the surface today. We're going to spend much more time on the 25th of May on pricing any form of advisory work. And then on day 3, I'll talk about how you do the work, how you deliver advisory services. And if you come to the website, you'll also see that you can then you can see the full schedule for each of the 3 days. So if you go to May 26, you can start to see who are the guest speakers, what are they speaking about, what times are the sessions. There are a number of people sponsoring it, like Helm, for example. So that is the Business Advisory Masterclass. It's a 3-day virtual conference. I recommend you attend live, but most of the sessions will be recorded and the replays will be available until the end of May if you can't make them live. But I recommend you come live because you'll get a chance to go to Q&A sessions and so on. The price of the masterclass is only $200 and you're going to get over 10 hours of training. But the great news is we have at the moment a special deal on where you can get a huge 80% off the ticket price. So if I just click on there, hope that's the right thing. There's a link there to go and check out the details and to register your place. And if you do that this week and use the coupon code that I put in there, you'll get 80% off. So it's just $40 for over 10 hours of training. It's going to give you everything you need to know how to build successful advisory service, whether it's business advisory, whether it's controller services, whether it's forecasting, whatever it is that you want to focus on. 3 days, we're going to go deep on how to package it up, how to promote it, sell it, price it, and how to win new clients through advisory work. Okay, let's move on. By the way, I've not seen any questions yet. I've got plenty more to show you, but I'm hoping there'll be time to answer 2 or 3 questions. So if you have some questions, stick them in the Q&A box. If you've already put a question in the chat box, I might not see it, so best to copy and paste it into Q&A. Okay, so let's go back to a couple of points I've said about pricing. I said to you that when you present your prices, you must give clients choices. You must give them options. Why? Well, one of the most fundamental things about pricing is that everybody values things differently. Also, everybody has what economists call a buyer's reservation price. That's more commonly referred to as maximum willingness to pay. In other words, there's an amount of money that's the most someone's willing to pay for something. Your job is to figure out what that is. And your job is to price as close to that as possible, because the extent to which you're below that is you leaving money on the table. So if you, for example, let's say you had the opportunity to meet the client that Roy Linus met a few days ago, and you quoted $1,000, which many of you perhaps would have done for doing that work, you would have left, if Roy gets the success fee, that's about $25,000. You would have left $24,000 on the table, because that client was clearly willing to pay $25,000 for a forecast because of the value for them. That doesn't mean everybody would pay 20. Absolutely not. Not everyone would pay $25,000. Some people will only pay $1,000. The point is, though, you have no idea. You do not know when you meet somebody what their maximum willingness to pay is. Your job is to figure it out and price as close to that as possible. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table. And sometimes people say, yeah, but Mark, isn't that ripping the client off? No, it's not. If the client sees value in what you do, then it's a fair price. And when Roy gets $25,000 as opposed to your $1,000, that means Roy has got the resource to be able to go over and above, to really blow that client's mind, to do things much. I know that Roy, he will do much more than just that forecast. He will perhaps help the client with the conversation with the lender. And if he doesn't get the finance, Roy will give him advice on what else to do. When you get bigger fees, you can afford to do better quality work for your clients. It's in the client's interest for you to price right. When you price too low, that's against the client's best interest, because we end up finding we have to cut corners because we only have so many hours in a day. If we're pricing too low, we end up finding ourselves being busy fools running around firefighting and not really delivering the value that we know we can do. So here's a really fundamental thing about value pricing. If you have a single price for your product, like $1,000 for a forecast, that single price is categorically wrong every single time. Why is it wrong? Because when you're talking to a client, the probability, the price, the $1,000, let's say, you're about to reveal is exactly the number they've got in their mind as the most they're willing to pay is so remote, so unlikely, it'll never happen. The maximum willingness to pay for that client is going to be one of two things. It's going to be a bigger number or a smaller number. If you're talking to a client about doing a cash flow forecast and they're thinking, this sounds okay, this is going to be worth $500, and you say it'll cost you $1,000, they're going to say that's too expensive, I'm not paying that, I'm going to go somewhere else. And you lose out, you miss out on the sale. But if, like Roy's client, they're thinking, I need this finance. This is so important to my business. This forecast is so important. This is going to change my life. If Roy can help me do this, this is worth $25,000. And you say $1,000 and the client says, yes, you might be thinking, great result. I've made a sale. No, you've lost out. And that's an even worse result than losing the sale because you left so much money on the table. So how do we get around that? Well, there's a number of ways, one of which is we can use what I call menu pricing. What that means is that we give our clients a range of options, some choices. So it looks something like this. Think of it as the bronze, silver, gold if you want. If it's a financial forecast, for example, then think about what could be a basic forecast, but how could you add more value to give a more valuable forecast, to give a silver package? And what could you do in a premium package? You want to think about different things you could do as part of a forecast and give the client a choice, and then create something, a sheet of paper or something with the different choices. So you can have a conversation with the client to see which one is right for them. If you only give them one price, then that's the most they can pay you. If So if we think back to Roy's story, the client went for the middle option. The top one was a success fee of £35,000, about $50,000. The client could have gone for that, but if Roy only ever offered $1,000, if that was a single fixed price, you'll miss out on the opportunity for the client to see greater value and pay you more money. So what I want to do very quickly is I'm going to show you something. Just bear me a second. I need to just log back in. I'm going to show you a process that some people use for pricing, and I'm going to look at pricing forecasting work because I want to illustrate a couple of points. So I'm using a piece of software called Effective Pricing right now. It's software to enable you to have a pricing conversation in front of a client, to have this conversation with the client, and you can price any service you want. I'm just looking at forecasting work because I want to illustrate a few things. When you are pricing, coming up with a price, then there's certain questions you want to ask. There's certain things you want to know. You want to know what's their willingness to pay. Is there someone who's willing to pay a lot of money or not a lot? And so you should ask the question, for example, well, why do you want a cash flow forecast? Because if they said something like, well, I'm just mildly interested in the future of my business, they're not going to pay as much money as, say, Roy's client who says, I'm just about to launch a brand new business and I'm looking for a lot of finance. So the reason why somebody needs something like a forecast can help you understand how much they are willing to pay. And so let's say it's someone obtaining finance. And then we could even put in how much it is. I don't know how much finance this client of Roy's wanted, but it's probably quite a big sum of money. So we could put in the amount there. In other words, the more finance they're looking for from their forecast, the more value there is, and therefore the price should be higher. We're value pricing. We're not pricing based on time. We're pricing based on value. We might ask questions like, well, if we're doing this forecast, do you want a 1-year forecast, a 2-year forecast, a 3-year forecast? If they want a longer forecast, then it should be a higher price. So let's give the client the choice. Perhaps it's a 3-year forecast. We might want to give them some options around, do they just want cash flow forecasting? Do they want a profit forecast? Do they want cash flow and profit? Or do they want a fully integrated 3-way forecast? Give people choices. Everyone wants different things. And so let's imagine this client probably just needs a cash flow forecast, but they say, do you know what? I like what you're just saying. I like the idea of a fully integrated one. Let's go with that. Okay, then we might give them some other choices. We might want to ask them if they want us with the forecast to model different accounts receivable or model inventory levels in their forecast. We might give them choices. We give them choices around different things as part of their forecast. Once we've done that, once we've asked them questions, then we can present our 3 choices, our 3 options, our bronze, silver, gold. We can go through these with the client and explain the different options to see which one they want. Let's say the client says, the client says, that premium forecasting looks great. I would love all those things in that first column. That's great. Once the client has articulated what they want, then the last thing we do is we reveal the price. Now, in this case, it's for the premium forecast, it's 3 payments of 1,211. The numbers that can be changed behind the scenes. And at this point in time, so that's 3,600, by the way, if you do the maths, so your accountants, 3 payments of 1,211 is 3,600 for the forecast. Only 1 of 2 things can happen. Client says yes or no. They either say yes, 3,600 or 3 payments of 1,211. I'm happy with that. If so, you're happy. Or they say, that's too expensive. That's outside my budget. Okay, we now know that we are above their maximum willingness to pay. No problem, because what we do is we can change something. We could say to the client, the reason why it's 3 payments of 1,211 is because you said you wanted a fully integrated 3-year forecast. But from what you've said, you only need a profit forecast. Would you like to see what the price would be if we just do a profit forecast? And the client will say yes to that question. So we simply just go back, and now it's 3 payments of 756. And here's the important point. I said to you earlier, we need to change the reference price. The client might have no idea what the price should be for a cash flow forecast or profit forecast. What we've done is we've created an anchor in their mind by revealing 3 payments of 1,211. So now we reveal 3 payments of 756. This feels like a smaller number, and therefore they're more likely to now say yes. If our first number would have been 3 payments of 756, they might have said that's too expensive. But because we've now shown them it's the 1,211, price psychology and anchoring teaches us that now that seems a smaller number. Okay, I'm not going to show you any more. I could go on forever showing you that. I just wanted to illustrate a few things there about when we're pricing advisory, involve the client in the pricing process, price high, and if the price is too high, we work with them to change the package to find something that is just what they want, that meets their budget or how much they're willing to pay. So Alison says, we've got 3 minutes left, 2 questions. Alison says, won't people always choose the lowest price option? Absolutely not. And I have so many examples of the 20 years I've been working with accountants and talking about offering different options, where the reality is, Alison, is that most people go for the middle option. Most people choose the middle. And there's a reason for that. There's some science behind it. If you've ever wondered why you usually see 3 options, bronze, silver, gold, it's called the magic of 3. If you go into Starbucks to buy a latte, they give you 3 choices: a tall, a grande, and a venti. And they've structured it so that most profit is the middle one. They make more profit from the grande, and they know most people choose the middle one. If you go to Apple to buy an iMac computer from their online store, go to Apple's website, and you will see they give you a choice. They give you a choice of 3 iMacs. And the reason why 3 is so powerful is because we learn in behavioral economics that we are risk averse. We don't like risk. And so when we're faced with 3 choices, most people, not everybody, but most people gravitate towards the middle one because the middle one feels safer. If we buy the cheapest one, we worry that it's not going to give us what we really want. And if we buy the most expensive one, we sometimes worry that we might pay more than we need. Middle one seems the best option. Most people choose the middle one. And out of everybody else, and I don't want to go into the science of this just yet, but out of everybody else, the reality is more people will choose the premium as opposed to the cheapest. Okay, so that's just the way it works. There's a science behind it, but hopefully that makes sense. Some will choose the cheapest, but actually not many. Right, next and last question is, Anna says, what would you recommend the minimum for a forecast could be? The minimum is entirely up to you, but every client is different. You should price every client individually. Because you don't know what the maximum willingness to pay is. And that's why you need a system where you can ask different questions and then come up with a price, or why you want to have ask questions, then go away and have a separate second meeting once you've thought about it. Okay, I think we have a hard break at this at 50 minutes past, so I'm going to hand back to the team. Thank you so much for watching, and I will perhaps catch you. If you've got any more questions, ask in my Facebook group. Bye for now.
All right, thanks so much, Mark. See everybody in the next session for Kelly.
Enjoy Kelly's session. It's going to be awesome.